Hello, so my name's Michael Conneely, and this is one of the regular Star Wheel webinars. Basically, a group of us students of Vedic astrology are working through the charts of members, and then when that is done, we're going to move on to the webinars being about astrological techniques and themes. And so from memory, the how to interpret the Vedic birth chart of members sessions will last till mid-December, and then the first of the techniques will be how to interpret the Navamsha chart, the soul chart, the chart of marriage. And the second one will be looking at transits through members' birth charts. Oh, and principles of the Master Vedic Astrology course is, first of all, that one essentially can do quite in-depth studies if one wants. So first of all, a report on your moon, and then a report on my moon, and then a report on a second planet of your choice in your birth chart, and then that planet in my birth chart, and so on. But I have found that that needs a lot of commitment over years. You know, I've done courses on that basis, and I know from experience that people can sort of falter and lose momentum, especially if there are like 3 levels to the course as there are in mine. So, to provide a totally different dimension of learning, we're offering these fortnightly webinars, which will go up to weekly from January 2016. And the principle of the Master Vedic Astrology course is that you can go into as much Western astrology crossover as you want to. That may be none, or it may be an immense amount. And of course we can particularly look at Chiron and the outer planets, which aren't in Vedic astrology. And basically it's applied astrology. I feel there can be little point in providing immense perception, which Vedic astrology certainly can offer. You know, you wouldn't believe the immensity of the probing declaration that Vedic astrology could go into, the sort of things we look at in the level 3 course. But there's no point doing that if we don't use it to empower ourselves and to heal ourselves. In fact, it can become self-congratulatory or ranting or legalistic. In other words, we develop powerful perception about our natal or our predictive astrology and then use that to shed ourselves of our unwanted karmic scripts, to become empowered, to embody the spark which we incarnated to become. So today we're looking, I think it may be the 6th members chart, at Yvonne's chart. And Yvonne isn't able to be with us for this, but we'll be listening to it. And the reason is that in fact her father has just died. And we're looking not only at Yvonne's Vedic and Western natal astrology, but also at 2 fated life incidents, the astrology of those. The first is when, following the regime of the Tibetan Buddhist order, she experienced like an incredible Kundalini breakthrough and was incapacitated. And the second is indeed the recent death of her father. So without further ado, let's go through the charts. And then at the end, in the final half hour, because this is essentially, both times in Yvonne's case, about death and rebirth, I'm going to do some work based on very simple artistic expression. You know, and I sort of draw these, you know, really important sketches in a few seconds, but many people, you know, can do quite detailed pictures, and then going on to embody the picture. And what the picture will be is the reborn me. How I would like to envisage myself reborn. And we'll be asking certain key questions about what do I need to let go of, what does it feel like, and so on. So this is a very valuable healing technique. Maggie and I did a lot of it over the weekend, just gone, when there was a full moon in Shatabishak nakshatra, a very powerful full moon. And I had like an immense creative breakthrough, not only about how I would like to be, but also about how visionary perceptions of the gods and goddesses of ancient Irish can guide me in that embodiment, because I'm actually writing a novel which centers on the Morrigan and the Dagda, seeing them both as they should be seen. So the Morrigan is the war goddess, standing up for yourself. The Dagda is the good god, somewhat different from the depictions that came down to us from the manuscripts of the medieval monks. And indeed, a member of the group, Louise, is very kindly offering to do the cover for this novel. It is my 6th novel. So here we go. First of all, the charts. So I'm going to share Yvonne's chart, and I'm hoping you can see it now. If someone would, if you can't, unmute yourself and tell me. So we're saying that we will be looking at the Vedic and Western birth charts of Yvonne, and then the charts for 2 fated life incidents. 6th of December 2010, collapse due to the impact of a Buddhist order, and 23rd of August 2015, the death of Yvonne's father. But first of all, Yvonne's birth chart. So just to orientate you, Yvonne's ascendant is in powerful Leo. Now this is the South Indian chart. There's also a North Indian chart, but I'll be using the South Indian chart for this webinar. Yvonne's moon is in Gemini, and I think a couple of the moons of the members of this group, or indeed their family, are in Gemini. We'll be looking at in more detail. And Yvonne's sun is conjunct Venus and Mercury in her 7th house, Aquarius. The nodes of the moon are Rahu, the north node, and Ketu, the south node, and they're the indicators of our incarnational destiny. Basically, Ketu is our past life or lives. It is what we come in with. Rahu, always opposite, is the driven impetus to manifest our incarnational destiny in this life. It's obsessional, it can be surrounded with illusion, but it is powerful, and that's to give us the power we need, but we need to purify it as we go and strip it of the surrounding illusion. And of course the sudden, vast, declarative insights and cosmic breakthroughs of Ketu strips us of those illusions. So We next go on to the planet position, so ascendant at 24 Leo, Sun at 6 Aquarius, Moon at 9 Gemini, Mars at 10 Taurus, Mercury at 9 Aquarius, Jupiter at 7 Scorpio, Venus at 29 Aquarius, Saturn at 11 Sagittarius, Rahu at 22 Virgo, and Ketu at 22 Pisces. Now, Vedic astrology not only has that 12-sign lunar zodiac that you saw in Yvonne's birth chart just now, it has a wonderful, magical, powerful 27-sign lunar zodiac, the 27 nakshatras. And these give us such powerful keys to our true identity. Not to have them is like having a curry without spices, something like that. And so Yvonne's ascendant is in Purva Palguni, the fourth pada of Purva Palguni nakshatra, ruled by Venus. Her sun is in the powerful nakshatra of Dhanistha, the female lioness, is the power animal. And her moon is in the uncompromising nakshatra of Ardra. Now, what will be coming up in her predictive astrology is her Mercury, which is in the, I think I was going to use the word freaky, constellation of Shatabishak, deeply meditative, deeply intuitive, the first pada, 24th nakshatra, pada 1, ruled by Rahu, the North Node. Now, Yvonne's Navamsha, this is her soul and marriage chart, and so, well, one of the things is that Yvonne and I did a Bhava Shaka analysis that analyzes the message your soul is sending you in this life, whether favorable or challenging. And I wanted to pick out that Yvonne's moon is in 7th house relationship from her Navamsha to her Rashi or birth chart. So there you are, moon in the birth chart in Gemini, moon in the Navamsha right opposite in Sagittarius. Now, to have the 7th house relationship is not easy. One of the things is it can mean that you try and balance everything up and always see the other point of view and lose yourself. Another is that you'll try and straddle all sides. And your life can take sudden 180-degree turns because you're riding two horses. So it's deeply transformative in that difficult way. Note that Mars in the Navamsha is 12th house compared to the birth chart, the Rashi. So there's Mars in Aries, the sign it rules, in the Navamsha. And you can see that, in fact, in the birth chart, the Rashi, as we've already mentioned, it's in Taurus. And so that isn't easy. It can mean that we don't find it easy to focus our energy. There can be huge drain, waste of energy, loss of focus, overgiving, failure to understand one's own energy, lack of understanding of the qualities of, in Yvonne's case, Mars. Now, if you remember, Venus was at something like 29 degrees in the birth chart. Here it is, 29 degrees Aquarius, her 7th house of marriage. And therefore it's her Atmakaraka. The planet of highest longitude is the Atmakaraka. And it's in 5th house relationship to her soul chart, which is very blessed and creative. Saturn, on the other hand, is in 8th house relationship. I'm skimming through, obviously, how the exercise is done, but when you do the exercise, it's normally part of the level 3 course. You learn how to do it, and it's quite easy. And 8th house isn't favourable. It is death and rebirth, sudden events, big change, unexpected and tough. That's Saturn. So I just dipped into Navamsha analysis. Here are her karakas, and notice that the Atmakaraka, the soul indicator, is Venus. Saturn is her career indicator, the Amatya Karaka. So let's just look at where Saturn is in her birth chart. And it is, yes, in Sagittarius 5th house. What nakshatra is it in? It is in Mula nakshatra as a career indicator. Spirituality and higher learning. The ability to confront, to bring death and rebirth through spirituality and higher learning. Mula is ruled by Niriti, the goddess of death and destruction. So let's press on. Well, in terms of dignities, the nodes are very powerful in her birth chart, a very fated life. Her soul chart, Mars is the strongest planet, and so she came through with those massive Mars script from previous life. And remember that Mars was in 12th house relationship from the Navamsha soul chart to the birth chart, so she won't be manifesting Mars easily. And also look at her planetary strength. There are many wonderful indications of planetary strength in Vedic astrology, but averaging them out, Shadbal, well, basically 100 would be a sort of baseline. So Mars is over twice as strong as the baseline, with Venus second. It's tremendously strong, yet tremendously difficult for her to gauge, manage and manifest. So we'll be coming to that as we go through. Going to the Western astrology, well, my goodness, I'm just making it a bit smaller so it fits in the screen. Look at the number of aspects, and that represents, at one sense, a huge fragility. Imagine grasping like an egg. There's all those aspects. It's not a record. I know someone, incidentally, that someone has an Ardra moon who has 2.5 times as many chart aspect shapes as Yvonne. But this is considerable. So basically we have the huge aspect of the Grand Cross. And that is massive held energy. It racks the whole chart. Mars square Pluto, Pluto square Jupiter, Mars and Jupiter square the Sun. So that is huge held energy, and it would be difficult for any human frame to hold that. But also there's a very different energy of a Grand Trine in water. Neptune in Scorpio, trine Moon in Cancer, where Moon in Cancer is trine. It looks like Mercury in Pisces conjunct the nearly Pisces Sun, where Mercury is trine Neptune. Now a Grand Trine points to a wonderful harvestable talent. But the thing about Grand Trines is they don't come automatically. Trines are lazy aspects, not like sextiles, which do manifest automatically. And a Grand Trine is always seen as the most difficult because, of course, it can... I don't know, I'll be coming to a description, we'll be looking to it in detail, but basically it can, I don't know, something words like souped out. It can just, lose touch with mundane reality completely. And yet when harvested, it is so psychic. Moon, Neptune, and Mercury, Sun. But notice that the Grand Trine is part of a kite, so you can see the Grand Trine, and on top of it there's a talent triangle. Neptune trine the Sun, Mercury, where each of those is sextile Saturn, and there's a spine to that kite, Saturn opposite the Moon. Now a kite gives tremendous directional force in a life. Kite people can take on remorseless and successful direction. And indeed they can be unconsciously directed, and it can indeed be difficult sometimes for their family because they're so directed on whatever it is they're doing. Now Saturn opposite Moon, well, we'll be coming to Saturn Moon in detail, but that Saturn and Moon, I feel, is emotional restriction, and because it's an opposition, Yvonne will have experienced from someone else, of course her mother. And indeed another thing about an opposition is that we can keep oscillating between either pole. So sometimes she will be Moon in Cancer, and other times Saturn in Capricorn. So we look at her psychodynamic Western astrology. Well, this is quite fascinating. Venus is unaspected. It doesn't form an aspect line with any of the other aspects in her chart. And effectively, Uranus is an unaspected subpersonality too. So sometimes Yvonne will be directing her life or ranging the visionary realms in this part of the chart, may not be able to manifest Venus, her wonderful exalted Venus, and may not be able to manifest needed revolutionary change. They are unaspected subpersonalities. But when they are aspected by progressions and transits, then she might suddenly lurch and inhabit only the subpersonality. And or it could totally take over and crash in on the rest of her life from having been inaccessible and cut off. We cannot actually see the unaspected planets. We cannot be aware of how we're manifesting the energy of unaspected planets. And so this is psychodynamic Western astrology, which I did a course in, and chart aspect shapes are a major part of it. And so this would be a list of things to be understood: unaspected Venus, unaspected Uranus, Grand Trine in water, Grand Cross, a kite, and this is an irritation rectangle. Moon, semisextile Mars, Mars in conjunct Saturn, Saturn widely in conjunct Jupiter and semisextile Jupiter, and Jupiter in conjunct the Moon. And we'll be looking at what that means. Here is a partial statement of the chart aspects in Yvonne's chart. It's quite a number, and again in psychodynamic astrology you need to know what each of them means. So there's the kite we were talking about. There is the achievement square or grand cross. There's the large talent triangle or Grand Trine. There's the unaspected Uranus. There's the unaspected Venus. But she has all sorts of quite specialist chart aspect shapes. And so, if you're studying psychodynamic Western astrology, you'd learn to know what they mean. So an animated figure is someone who's very, very simplifying. Someone who's a very good presenter, can use cartoon-like representations to get over points. A decorative figure is someone who, again, can make very good presentations. I'm only picking out one possible meaning. So I think she'd be very good at presenting things. There's a provocative figure and a streamer. Note the righteousness rectangle. So that's this blue rectangle enclosing two oppositions. And basically, well, I have one of those. So you start off in life, you've been taught to say, well, I'm all right, and it's all sorted out, and the method is this, and I'm dreadfully sorry that you're unenlightened and low on the scale of consciousness, and you've actually got it wrong. But then we have a huge crisis where we realize that we've been embracing an illusory paradigm. Hopefully we do this, and many people get stuck pushing their paradigm, whatever spiritual path it is. But when it happens, what is said is that the qualities of the crossed oppositions rot, and it turns into a mystic rectangle, a wonderful, compassionate mystic rectangle, and one can become absolutely the healer and teacher of others. And so Yvonne will, be studying the crossed oppositions and what the rectangle means. I just picked out nature versus nurture in psychodynamic astrology. There's the birth chart, which you've seen, but then there is the house chart of nurture. So in the birth chart, I'm just checking the volume. In the birth chart, the signs are all the same size, whereas in the chart of our nurture, the houses are all the same size. And you note the effect of nurture. Usually, the key effect of nurture is your very earliest environment, your very earliest upbringing, and it looks like her intuitiveness was wiped out. In other words, something about the family she was born into just wiped it out. She can regain it later and integrate it later. And I think it's essentially because they were very earthed. Indeed, cardinal earth. And that can often be materialistic, which isn't her true nature at all. This wonderfully intuitive person, she's got a Piscean script, mutable water, not fixed earth. That was imposed on her. Okay, before we go on to the first incident, I want to pick out a few meanings from her chart. So what I'm going to do is leave you looking at her Vedic birth chart, which hopefully you should be clearly able to see, and then I'm going to pick up on certain meanings. And members have already been sent a number of documents. Okay, let's go through them. So first of all, I want to look at Moon Saturn. Well, basically, focus, problem solving, technical and scientific writing. I've definitely found that. Efficient, but unfavorable, can be emotional restriction, creating shyness, can be indulging in their own sadness, can be getting depressed because they're not honored for all their hard work, and can be that they don't communicate their needs enough because no one heard when they were children. They get fatigued and try too hard. It can manifest in great need for structure and permanence. Indeed, Bleak House could have been the case in childhood, Dickens' novel, that is. And so Liz Green, in her book Saturn, says the security of family ties is an illusory one. It's often very dangerous to assume that one has the right, because of blood ties, to command emotional support from others. Parents can die, partners can leave, children can grow up. And the person with Moon Saturn is generally caught in pain and disappointment if she seeks to bind herself to these external things by emotional need. There's often the feeling of the trapped child in the personality of a Moon Saturn type. It can be the child who had to grow up rather early. Can be a delay in the proper emotional development. Can have to take on responsibilities at too young an age. Maybe the mother was overburdened, and so the child ends up playing the role of mother in some way. Maybe the kind of love that is unconditional love of the child was in short supply. So the Moon-Saturn child generally gets the message very early that she has to be emotionally self-sufficient. And how can a little child be emotionally self-sufficient? Maybe the mother feels on her own, weighted down with her responsibilities, maybe working all day, no spare time. And often the child becomes extremely sensitive to the mother's needs. So the ramifications are huge in adulthood. The Moon-Saturn combination is common in the charts of people in farming communities where, you know, life is hard, hours are long, and certainly I've seen that. So it can be difficult for the individual to get away from the duties, the history she was born into. So I'm stressing this at some length, but you'll see when we get to the astrology of the two fated events how important it is to understand that opposition. Is there anything else I would want to say? I don't think so. So I've given you the document, so I'm now going to drop that from my screen. Now, let's look at the Grand Cross. So, this of course is in Yvonne's, oh gosh, I've got the wrong document, Yvonne's Western Astrology. And again, read the 4-page document I sent you. But essentially, energy is molded into fixed form and held. And so energy builds up like an accumulator. High tension is created, needing to be discharged along the 4 sides of the rectangle. Terribly difficult for the person to hold this. Incidentally, I mentioned that Yvonne has Sun, she's the female lioness, in Dhanistha nakshatra or lunar sign. Well, what a combination for holding authority, to be the female lioness and to have a Grand Cross. And I do know, for example, senior teachers and academics who have this combination, but they have to be so careful because it destroys their health, because they can end up living out a lie and an act to hold on to their all-important position. But when that's purified, what a presence that is. So it can be a very determined person who makes a good manager, someone who pulls all the strings. It's achievement orientated and practical, work process orientated. The energies can get very blocked if the person can't live as she wants, and so there's a tendency to repress and block, and that builds up terrible problems. Remember, the unaspected Uranus can't bring in needed revolutionary change, and so it crashes in. The performance of such a person is unrivaled. She's tenacious and persistent, so it can be very much the organization person. Of course, because it's so fixed, it can be prone to the imposition of fixed ideas, although I think if you review this, you'll see that it's not in fixed signs. So basically, a paradigm, a cult, can be imposed. People with this red square take life very seriously, and so on. So I think I've sort of characterized that. Now let's go on to her Grand Trine in water. Totally different energy. Could not be more difficult. How does she straddle the two? Remember, I think her Grand Trine was wiped out by her earliest childhood environment. But anyway, let's go for it. The figure points to a wonderful finished quality or inborn talent. It encompasses a wide range of experience that permeates and dominates the personality. The reaping of this talent is not automatic. Grand Trines need conscious working at, otherwise they become the ruined crop, or even negative, or even criminal. Their trines are lazy aspects. They see no need to develop new qualities and approaches. They put too much reliance on conditioning or illusory life slogans. So although the figure can be enjoyed, it's there to be used. You mustn't ever squander the talent or keep it exclusively to yourself. It needs to be given freely. Otherwise, the fruits go to rot and go to waste. The difficulty lies in the blueness, the three blue trines in the color coding of psychodynamic astrology. There's no challenging aspects, are there? There's just the relaxed blue aspects. To give and not to count the cost is the spiritual motto of this person. But inertia and stagnation are the fruits if it's mismanaged. Reliance on luck is present, and it is a double-edged sword. It can be people who get defeated by life, or who turn to addictions or antisocial lifestyles and self-indulgence. The Grand Trine, it's a bit like Revati nakshatra. You can feel you have a charmed life. You can't see how your life isn't charmed. So I think I've covered that. As a last chart aspect shape, I want to look at the Irritation Rectangle. So that's the green rectangle enclosing two red oppositions. I've sent you a 2-page document. So it's great stability of consciousness, the person striving for mental continuity and to expand their awareness. However, they can stick fanatically to their decisions, and mental rigidity can lead to dualistic conflict and stagnation. The person learns to defend themselves early on against attack in childhood, so that can make real contact with them difficult. The figure can resist movement, unlike a triangle figure. There's only green, which is uncertainty and compulsion to learn, and red, which is fixed and bows little to outside pressures. So it's difficult for the individual to combine, to fix the mutable. So the person appears to be looking around her alertly and deliberately, But there are twice as many green lines as red ones and no blue. But it can look as though this person is mentally running away from her inner suffering because no harmonization is possible. Life managed by willpower and lucidity. So basically, great irritation can build up, and it creates a lot of alertness, eyes flashing, ears pricked up. It's not relaxed, it's high voltage. So, the irritation rectangle requires that inattention be used as the impetus for personal development, not that other people are overloaded by forcing one's knowledge on them. The figure wants to transfer the pressure of the red aspects to the breadth, tolerance and flexibility of the green aspects, which is a hard task. Okay, so we've looked at the 4 documents I sent you. We'll now go through the other meanings. Yes. Now the other thing is Chiron-Venus. So I am going to move the chart down so you see the Western birth chart. Now there is Venus, there is Chiron. Chiron is semi-sextile Venus. And ignoring that very weak, very wide trine from Venus to Jupiter, that's a cut-off sub-personality, Chiron, semi-sextile Venus. And notice that it actually cuts off Sun and Mercury from the rest of the chart. So what is it that is cutting off the integration of Sun and Mercury? Well, basically Chiron-Venus is the ability to love where others wouldn't. It's the ability to see beauty where others might not. It is a wound to love. And of course Venus is Yvonne's Atmakaraka, her soul indicator. Her previous life had Venus as a big agenda and it wasn't completed. And so the completion of her karmic task now will in some way cut off her conceptualization, her ability to communicate all the immensity of the rest of her chart, maybe. This really needs analyzing. So let's look at Chiron-Venus. It's the gift of seeing beauty where others cannot, finding values where others dismiss as worthless. The values of Chiron-Venus are intensely personal, and they're adhered to with great tenacity, and they can assume immense philosophical or political dimensions. It has a knack of meeting people who are familiar or important to us, maybe from other lives. This is a perspective which can be used to resolve seemingly intractable relationship problems. We find inspiration and discover our next steps through intense synchronous meetings with people who bring new ideas, rich interpersonal encounters, suggestions, insights, business contacts. Especially this aspect can bring artistic inspiration and personal growth. It's an aspect very sensitive to disharmony between others, and we can be involved in others' disputes. The first intimate relationships are a baptism of fire, especially with Venus Atmakaraka. Chiron-Venus has the ability to open up others' capacity for relationships, to touch them deeply. Love astrology. Holding on to innocence, the Chiron-Venus person may enter dark areas of relationships, enduring trial and suffering as test, the myth of psyche. Chiron-Venus can be drawn to beautiful people, images rather than real people, seduced by glamours or art. Tibetan Buddhist monks maybe. Can suffer illusory intoxication with being in love with love. I want to quickly mention Mercury in Shatabishak nakshatra. Now we're going to go back to so you can see her Vedic birth chart. Where is it? Here we are. And notice Mercury there at 9 Aquarius, and if we look at the nakshatras, that's Mercury in Shatabishak, part of 1. This gives Yvonne such a quality of mind. I'm just trying to, here we are, find the meaning. So it's mystical, meditative, philosophical, scientific, the visionary dreamer, secretive, reclusive, can be stubborn. It's actually my Manasa nakshatra. One's 25th nakshatra from moon in one's birth chart shows one's default state of consciousness, and Shatabishak is my default state of consciousness. And it is the quality of Yvonne's Mercury, her conceptual mind. The ruling deity is Varuna. I'd like to show you a wonderful picture of Shatabishak nakshatra, so I'm going to try and stop the sharing just to show you and then start the sharing again. So let's see if I can do that. So hopefully you will see. Now this is a wonderful book on the nakshatras, trying to hold it in front of the camera, by Prash Trivedi, the 27 Celestial Portals. It's a very good book because it is so, what's the word, novelistic in portraying warts and all what you'll be like if you have a certain nakshatras. And here's his, let's see if I can get it in the screen, if I will succeed. Oh dear. Yes, this is his depiction of Varuna. His pictures are very idiosyncratic and quite wonderful. Okay, I'm going to read you a bit on Varuna. So that means I need to share the screen again. Oh, before I do, I also want to recommend Camilla Sutton's book on the nakshatras. It's very different from Prash Trivedi's, the 27 Celestial Portals, because, you know, it's very systematized and you know, good presentation of procedures, but it doesn't sort of go in for almost the novelistic spice and vision and inspiration that Prash Trivedi's book goes in. I think both are essential. Okay, so let's try and go back to screen share. Yes, I'm hoping you will now again see her birth chart. And I'm just going to read a bit from Prash Trivedi on Varuna, if I can find it. I thought I'd bookmarked it. There's wonderful stuff here. So yes, here's Varuna. So Varuna is, well, the nakshatra means the 100 physicians. It's the healer's sign. And Varuna is a bit like Neptune, lord of the cosmic and terrestrial waters. magical cures and divine waters are dispensed. You saw that Varuna was holding a pot containing soma, soma, the drink of the gods, the drink of the Vedic rituals, the nature of which is lost, but also medicinal herbs. And Prash Trivedi's wonderful other book is called The Rahu Ketu Experience. And he talks about the churning of the cosmic ocean by the gods and demons in that. I'm just trying to see. Shatabishak's essential nature is to view everything with suspicion. I think I do that. And they're capable of shielding themselves. Its symbol is the circle. So they're solitary, eccentric, but not in my case, of course, reclusive and introverted. Being alone gives rise to contemplation, which produces wisdom and enlightenment. It's a wonderful energy. They're masters of secrecy, and they can blurt out harsh truths at the most inopportune moments. Their philosophy is usually heavy on intellectualism. So I just mentioned a few things from the wonderful chapter by Prash Trivedi. Okay, so what else was I going to say? Yes, you see, the reason I've mentioned her Mercury is because in these two fated life incidents, it is the action of Mercury that is the alchemy, the alchemical stimulus. Right, let's look at those. So we'll go to the first one. Okay, what happened was that a crisis occurred on the 6th of December 2010. Yvonne had been drawn into a Tibetan Buddhist order for some years previously. And, you can see how it totally played into her Grand Cross, and indeed the Grand Trine with its visionariness. But these orders are all-consuming, and it got too much for her. I'm just going to tell you a little bit of my own background. Basically, starting 1998, I did a 5-year university-based ethnography. That is a social anthropology of spiritual forms new to the modern West. The method ethnography was created by Bronislaw Malinowski during the First World War. And it is this, that you have to live in the communities you study and give the members their own voice. And so I had to, my study areas were Hinduism, Buddhism, paganism, shamanism, and utopian community. Now, within Buddhism, I studied Sharpen College and Gaia House, which are very Western received Buddhism. I studied the Goenka Vipassana Center and a Tibetan Buddhist Gompa. I absolutely love the highest yoga tantras, dropping in to that strand of the ethnography over the 5-year period. And of course you had to live in it and do the volunteer roles that the members of the community have to do. And so, for example, I prepared the Gompa for meditations. I fed the images of the deities, staffed the cafe beforehand and after the meditation, all those sorts of things, and it became utterly exhausting. And I remember perhaps the final crunch in my case, which is small compared to what happened to Yvonne, is I was woken about sort of dawn one morning, utterly exhausted, my health breaking from the strain, and the monk said, the World Peace Cafe, the cafe's roof is leaking, there's water coming in, and he wanted me in the grey dawn to climb onto the roof of the cafe to stop the leak before I prepared breakfasts. And what sort of got to me was that the cafe was built on the edge of a ravine. So I was meant to sort of crawl over the wet roof, on the edge of which was something like a 90-foot ravine. And my enthusiasm for the Dharma declined at that point. I'm joking, but of course, I'm just trying to say that because of what Yvonne had to face. Now, let me read a statement, because, you see, we've been looking at her astrology. Now, this is the point of breakdown. This is what was predicted by her astrology. So here's a brief summary. I began attending Tibetan Buddhist Center 2001, starting with the beginner's meditation class, going on to attend the higher level tantric empowerments, all fast track, pushed to get more and more involved, fascinated by the new philosophy of life. Before, I'd been wary of ordered or orthodox religions. I had been brought up in an environment that didn't encourage deep thinking or communication, and the Buddhist community offered a sense of belonging, the acceptance of being different. But my strong feelings of not fitting in and not being good enough resurfaced again with the pressures of the community dynamic, the teachings, the conformity to their ideal. Headaches and fatigue started from December 2006. I do feel that so many of the Tibetan Buddhist monks and nuns that I have seen will indeed get depressed and can totally create, it's like spiritual bypass, create a totally illusory personality. So the highest point of impact on my Kundalini symptoms was on the 6th of December 2010, and she mentions the synastry, which we'll look at. So, and it shattered her world. She lost mental and physical health. She was an emotional wreck. She lost sort of everything. Her partner had to look after her. The illusion of my old identity and world was destroyed. I feel now that I'm slowly getting to know myself. My symptoms have never been diagnosed by medical science, but health in various forms has arisen along the way. Remember Shatabishak? Studying astrology with Michael has been an enormous benefit. I continue to improve, albeit slowly. It is notable that I have Moon conjunct my dad's sun in Cancer, and this is when his Alzheimer's began. I sincerely hope this reading brings some insight and understanding to all who read this and listen to Michael's interpretation. So let's look at the astrology. So first of all, well, there's Yvonne's birth chart, and there's the astrology of now, 6th of December 2010. Now, this is big. Notice that Ketu is conjunct the moon. Ketu is at 22. Sorry, Ketu is at 9 Gemini, moon. I can't quite read it. Anyway, it's roughly the same. Ketu conjunct the moon is very tough. It can mean health collapse. It can mean the mother is going through health collapse. It can indicate death. Ketu transiting the sun can most certainly indicate death, although the death can be delayed until the trigger comes along, but not necessarily. So, look at the pile-up here. Ketu conjunct the moon. Saturn conjunct Rahu. Yes, Saturn conjunct Rahu. That's the most implacable energy. It's concentration camp. You crack. This was the build-up her soul chose to face in this man. Now look at this one. Mercury, Mars, Rahu, Mercury and Pluto in 5th house Sagittarius conjunct Saturn, Gulika and Mandi. Gulika and Mandi are the shadow children of Saturn. We studied them in the advanced level 3 course, but they are harbingers of disaster. And for example, when you have mass shootings and so forth, they're often prominent. So she's got a very difficult Saturn anyway in her birth chart, conjunct Gulika and Mandi, but Rahu Mars was on top of it. Rahu Mars is driven force, conjunct Pluto. I rest my case. And all of that surrounding Mercury, mind and communication. This is like a sledgehammer hitting something, hitting a mind. Now let's look at the Vedic predictive periods, the Dasas, the Bhuktis, the Antons. We're talking 6th of December 2010, so she was in Mercury Ketu. Okay, well, look, you're just simplifying. Here we have Mercury, remember, Shatabishak. That wonderful inspirational mind of hers was being activated. It was the backdrop of her life. It was meant to dispel the unreal life. The Bhukti, the sub-period, the forefront, was Ketu, south node of the moon, sudden shattering of illusions. Ketu strikes. And indeed, the sub-period was Venus. So we have Mercury, Ketu, Venus. And Venus is her Atmakaraka. And during your Atmakaraka period, your whole life is tumbled if you're not on course. I'm in Atmakaraka period at the moment, and I've gone through so much death and rebirth. It ends in October. Now look at the Western. Here's the Western chart for the health incidents. Notice that on the nodal axis, south node opposite the north node, which is surrounded by Moon, Mars, Mercury and Pluto. And they are, look at this, all on top of the Saturn, the Moon-Saturn opposition that I read out to you at such length. It was karmically activated, and it was broken and opened so that it could provide the strength of the container that it was meant to offer, and yet not be the prison it so often is. Notice that Chiron, virtually on top of Sun, Chiron, and conjunct Neptune. Healing of the wound, it's wounded healer stuff, and yet visionary with it. Wonderful opportunity, but enough to smash the human physique. Let's look at the psychodynamic indicators. Well, basically, there are two age progressions. One, this black circle in the black cross starts off at the ascendant, goes round the rim of the chart, taking 72 years. It had got to here. It was on top of Mars. Now, when you review this, look at Mars. Mars is over twice as strong as it naturally would be in terms of planetary strength. And, of course, it's part of, look, Mars, Pluto, Saturn, the Grand Cross. Words can't express what was activated there. I can't really imagine. It's like a mold being shattered. And yet there's another age point that goes around the rim of the chart, the nodal age point, which represents the whispers of our soul to us from the astral. And hers was indicating Venus. It was telling her, be your Venus, understand your Venus. Forget all this dogmatic stuff. Forget all this regime. And she heard the whispers. Okay, incident 2 was the very recent death of her father. And so here's her birth chart, and below it the chart for the moment of his death. And what I want to say, oh my goodness, Gulika and Mandi again in the heavens on top of her Gulika and Mandi. Such dangerous energies, the shadow children of Saturn. Notice that her nodal return, Rahu was in Virgo, and Rahu in Virgo in her birth chart. And so, how would you interpret that? Well, you'd interpret the meaning of Rahu in the second house, Ketu in the 8th, Rahu in Virgo, Ketu in Pisces, and huge meaning now for Yvonne to understand that, and at the start of a new 18.5-year period of unfoldment around that incarnational life destiny stated by the position of the nodes of the moon in her birth chart. Notice there's a Neptune to Mercury transit. Neptune to Mercury. Very psychic intuitive. Mars and Venus account in the Cancer 12th house. Yes, here we are, Mars and Venus in the heavens in Cancer. Well, that's very, as it were, sexual, but very stormy for love. It can transform us sexually, and get us out of the rut, but also there can be sort of fighting and conflict, particularly if there's been repression or denial. It's not an easy energy, but basically its divine purpose is to call us to become more creative and sexual and loving. But Mars doesn't like Cancer because Cancer's water and Mars is fire, so it's steamy. But look, it's on top of Uranus at the moment, this transiting conjunction. So that is revolutionary change, and great success will follow. There's the yogi point which we study in the level 3 course. And she's in Mercury, Sun, Moon, Dasha, Mercury again, Mercury in Shatabishak. So where is it? Here we are. Am I right? So Mercury, Sun ran from... Oh no, sorry, she's in Mercury, Moon at the time. So let me just get this right. So Mercury, Moon, and so within that, I haven't shown, I can just look it up. So it was August 2015. I'll just look it up in the actual program, which you won't be able to see. Here we are. Mercury, Moon ends. So it's June 2015 to November 2016. So it was August 2015. So it was Mercury, Moon, Mars until the 25th of August when it was Mercury, Moon, Rahu. So let me check when the date was. It was still within Mercury, Moon, Mars, the final shot of it. And we've talked a lot of Mars already. Here's the Western astrology for the death of Yvonne's father. And here is it with her natal chart in the middle. And notice immediately just trying to pick up the threads. Chiron on top of her natal Venus. There's the natal moon Saturn. I'm missing something. Got it. Look at this. The transiting nodes are exactly crossing the Moon-Saturn opposition. The Moon is square the nodal axis in the heavens. Saturn is square the next. Fated development. I recently knew of another death, someone who had Ketu Uranus exactly on their sun at the end of January. and they were dead in the water, but the actual death didn't occur until, let me get this right, their Uranus squared the nodal axis in the heavens. You know, the nodes bring very fated developments. Looking again at the Psychodynamic Predictive Astrology, well, this is just utterly once in a lifetime and amazing. The nodal age point is on Saturn, opposite the individuation age point on the Moon. Once in a lifetime, Yvonne will be offered shattering revelation about what that Moon Saturn means. Obviously, it'll take her time to assimilate it, but now is the time for it to break. Right, I now want to go on to an exercise. Well, essentially, both of those two fated experiences are death and rebirth. So what I want you to do now is to have, pen and paper handy, because we're supposed to do the simplest of sketches, or you can do more complicated if you want to be like Louise and be an illustrator. But I use art. And I throw a sketch off in a minute. For example, to show, to depict what's coming through to me in a visionary way from the sure declaration of the astrology. So what I'm going to ask us to do in the remaining 20 minutes is check in where we are, draw an image, embody the image, and that will be our reborn self. Identify barriers to the reborn self, and then to harvest from the art, from the embodiment. So let's just check in where we are now. This is ridiculously rushed, but of course if you review this webinar, you can do it at your own pace. Just jot down what the steps are and do it at your own pace. So first of all, physically, how are you feeling? What sensations are coming to you? Scan your body. Do you feel pressure anywhere? Do you feel power anywhere? Is something clenched? Is something ready to manifest? How does your body feel? And when you're redoing this exercise, you take more time. But now, emotions. What are your feelings right now? You've only got to get to the very top of the feeling layers. What are you feeling? And next, your mental body. What stories are your mind telling you? There can be fearful or limiting scripts. There can be imaginative icons. What is your mental body telling you? And fourthly, what is your spiritual body? What's happening to you spiritually at this phase? Think back, we just had a full moon on Saturday. We are therefore in the waning moon, we're processing, we're integrating. We're coming up to 2 eclipses this month. I'll post the stages in this work on the blog when I post this webinar tomorrow, so you can look up what we have done, so you can do it again. So, we've very briefly taken stock of where we are now, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Now, very briefly, in this almost John Run, I'd like you to get pen and paper and to draw the reborn you. Now, what has come into your mind, an image of the reborn you? So quickly sketch it. So I'm sketching in, it's just sort of coming to me. Different a bit from what I drew at the weekend. How are your legs positioned? How are your hands? Your arms? Sketch it in. Good. Well, mine's even less of a work of art than the ones I do on Saturday and Sunday with Matthew. But I found myself, you know, I've drawn this figure, especially, you know, it's sort of, in my case, you know, moving forward in a dance and holding aloft a shamanic drum. I never thought it would be that. That came from nowhere. And I actually have planned, you know, a series of vision work to, as I said, envision the Morrigan and the Dhanistha and the scenes of my novel. And so this is saying, you know, break out of the mold, you know, drum, dance, bring in vision, write it down, communicate it, share it. So, what I will post is 3 questions you need to ask as you look at your image. I am. So it seems I am a shaman. What are you? I am. Second of the 3 questions, I want. What do you want now? If you don't know what you want, you can't ask for it. You can't manifest it. What do you want? Third question, I need. So this has been ridiculously fast, but you know, I hope I managed to communicate it, and certainly you can do it yourself at your own leisure. So the next stage is what's called embodiment. I'm now going to ask you to stand up and embody this image. So, you know, you'll sort of adopt the posture of the reborn you and try and get it right, starting with your feet. How do they stand on the ground or rise? You know, your legs, your ankles, your legs, the pelvis, stomach, chest, neck, head, spine. You know, is there a particular body part that needs to guide your embodiment, your dance, if you like? So for a few moments now, we will stand embodying the image we've drawn. And then we'll sit down again and do 2 more things. Identify the barriers to being the image of the reborn you and harvest from the art and embodiment. So please, I'm asking you now to stand and embody the reborn you. Embody the image. Only briefly. So here we go. Get the feeling of it. How does it feel? Feet, your legs, pelvis, chest, shoulders, arms, hands. What in your visionary mind are you doing as you take this posture of the reborn you? Getting that tremendous third eye activation. So in my case, totally unexpected. I'm a shaman. Yeah. And the energy, how is it? Is it very sort of dynamic? Loving? What? And so now I'd ask you to sit down again and let's have a first thrust, as it were, identifying the barriers to us being the image. So close your eyes. What barriers exist? Just thought of one. And so when we do this exercise, and indeed now, you might jot down the barriers. And certainly, you work out how you're going to handle them. Whether the perception is enough to make them diminish, whether you can do EFT, emotional freedom technique, some other form of healing, mantra, yoga, whatever. And the last question, there's 10 minutes left, but I'm going to sort of ask for any questions, but your last question is harvesting. So the 5 parts we did is we did a check-in, we drew an image. Thirdly, we embodied the image. Fourthly, we identified barriers. Fifthly and lastly, harvest. Okay, ask yourself, what did it feel like to be the reborn me? Where will you get this sense of thriving from? Your body is your guide. We need to check into our bodies. We navigate a life between the planetary tides. Our ship goes from the port of our birth to the port of our death. And the path is often fated, but there's so much we can do and manifest as we go. So what does that reborn you feel like? Okay. So I'm now going to go back to the Hangout screen and stop the screen share. I'd like to say that Yvonne's astrology was so fated, yet depicted such a wonderful mind, such a powerful person, such a helper of others. And it triggered us into awareness that the old unsatisfactory me can die, and even through seemingly adverse circumstances and through a valley of fear, we can be reborn. I'd be very happy to answer any questions if Maggie would like to. I don't know, Maggie, would you unmute people or what? Hello, Maggie?
Yes, I'm unmuting. Hang on. I think you have to unmute yourself. I've unmuted me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes. So if anybody wants to speak, could you just move your mouse and then go to the center top screen and click on the mic button, and then you'll be able to speak. So if anybody's got anything to say, or alternatively, you can go to the left hand side and write something in the chat, but it might be just easier to speak. So yes, because I can't, it seems I can't unmute people. I can't unmute them. I was able to mute them, but I can't unmute them. So they have to do it themselves.
Hi, Maggie and Michael. I can unmute.
Yeah, lovely.
So, yeah.
How did you find that? Did you find the exercise, for example, and the reading manageable, Lisa?
Yeah, I enjoyed how you show, because it's difficult as a beginner to understand the transits. So when you had charts that way, even though you had the other symbols of Western astrology in there as well, like Pluto, which I'm not used to seeing, it really helped to see like where Rahu was in the same sign, you know, and the same as her birth chart to her transit chart. That really brought it home for me. And even the Western chart, I got a bit more of an idea also with those transits on how they just seem to all accumulate in one place. You could see that was going to be something big. So it really did clarify more and more for me, the charts and the transit, how that starts to work. It's good.
How did you find the art and embodiment? Was it just too fast?
I generally, unlike Louise, I feel not a great artist, but would like to be. And that actually came really quickly, and I got a lot from that exercise very quickly, which normally, because I procrastinate because I don't feel good enough to do it, but that just you hurried me along, so it was good, because then I got a lot actually out of that.
Ah, wonderful. Yes, I mean, I feel I got a lot out of it, and I've now got to sort of put time aside in the coming week to manifest it. My problem is that the coming week is set aside for accounts.
Yeah, well, that will be maybe more intention to do it. You'll need to do it even more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I must. Oh, thank you indeed, and it's lovely to be able to talk to you, the other side of the world.
Yes, yes, it's lovely. It was very good this morning.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. You said this morning, verging on midnight.
Yes, it is. Yeah, there you go. But
Did anyone else?
Here the sun's fresh.
Anybody else like to say anything before we sign off?
Hello, it's Louise.
Louise.
Hello, so it took me a while to work out how to unmute because I'm on an iPad and I couldn't find it.
Terrifying.
Yes, I know, but no, it's very good tonight. Thank you very much. And Rebecca said she'd like to say something, but she's beside her husband who's asleep, so she can't.
Perhaps he needs awakening.
Yes. But we were texting each other a little bit, just marvelling at how many similarities that we all seem to have in the group.
Yes.
Charts. We thought that was really interesting.
It is. Yes, I mean, we're in 3 different continents and we all have a similar bundle of scripts. I will definitely email those little steps in the exercise, so that if people want to do it again at their leisure, repeat it, they can. They may not need to. So I'll definitely do that. It takes time for YouTube to accept and upload, so all this won't be available until possibly early afternoon tomorrow. But then it'll all be available. And if anyone has any questions at all, just simply email me.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay, so it's now sort of spot on the hour-and-a-half time, and I'd like to offer the sincerest thanks to everybody. So thank you to Maggie for setting up the technological infrastructure. There's far more preparation than people would imagine. But I think we've got the hang of it now, or Maggie has anyway, which is what counts. And thank you for being the astrologers who can take astrology into empowerment and healing. And I think, I feel certainly, some of you will sort of, teach and write astrology as well. I do feel that, you're treading like a very rich path. So, on that note, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.